Dear Lord, we come to give you praise this evening, thanking you for the Sabbath rest that you have brought us to. Thank you, Lord, for the protection and the provisions that you have made for us to go forth in this message. Thank you, Lord, for the midnight cry, continuing to lead us in the light that you have given us. And as we continue to learn all that you have given us to learn and all that is to unlearn, may we unlearn, regardless of how we feel about it. If we are to unlearn it and dispose it, then may we do so. So thank you, Lord, and as we participate in this study tonight, we pray for your Holy Spirit to be in the midst of us, to guide our minds through these studies, that we may gain great knowledge and our hearts be changed by it, that we may not be moved from the truth that you have given us. In Yeshua's wonderful name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Okay, so we're still not complete on we're still going to be working on the 2520 over the next weeks in the midst of all of our other reviews that we're doing from May 2020 to July 2021. But on days that we wind up not having somebody scheduled, then we're going to work on working on the waymarks, being able to defend the waymarks. So I wasn't prepared for today, so I borrowed from Aaron's notes. And if you have not cheated, I do want this to be open mics. Love to see faces too. And open mics group study. And I want to ask I'm trying to think of the question, how to ask the question. How well, who might be one of our better ones at understanding 9/11? Luke, how about you? How well do you know 9/11? Maybe he's not there.
Sorry, Elaine, I'm still just getting set up.
Oh.
What was your question?
Well, I want to know, because I think I have a fairly good answer for the rest of them, but I may be wrong. But how well do you know 9/11 as a waymark to defend it?
Oh, okay. I know what we don't use, which is like Life Sketches 411, paragraph 5.
Twin Towers, is that the reference?
That's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Okay. So, because I know that, I'm getting, there's details in the 2520 that I probably don't remember, but I have a pretty good understanding of being able to lay that structure out. And we've gone through that a couple times, and we'll continue to go through that. But I thought tonight we would work a little bit on 9/11. And again, like I said, make it a group study like we've been doing, and open mics, cameras we love. And but if you have not used your cheat sheet, which I hope you haven't yet, because we're going to start out these notes. There's 4 studies that Aaron put together four articles that he put together on 9/11, because we'll need to be able to defend our waymarks, as Fel told us that Tamina had said too, and it is true. We need to be able to defend our waymarks. And what is it about 1989 and 9/11 that's different than the other 3 waymarks? When you look at the 5 waymarks, what is it that's different about 1989 and 9/11?
The other 3, from Sunday Law, Close of Probation, Second Advent, those were given to us by Ellen White, but the first 2 were not. So we had to come up with those 2 waymarks.
Okay. So how do you suppose we get those 2 waymarks?
From the Millerite line.
Okay. And that's a good start. That's a good start. So what he has, and again, hopefully you don't pull out your cheat sheet. I have mine, but I'm sorry. To be unfair. Oh, somebody's got to watch out and make sure we get it right, and myself included. But he lays out the reform lines, because if we're going to teach a Levite, we're going to be teaching a Levite. We need to teach him first the basic reform lines and how we get here. So what he's laid out on the cheat sheet that I want you to look at later, if you haven't already, he's laid out multiple lines, but I only had room for a few, so I didn't do them all. So if you would help me then, I put up here, can you guys see it okay? I need to spotlight it, right? Let's see here. Okay, can you see it okay?
Yeah, it looks good to me.
Agricultural line? Okay, so with the agricultural line, we just need to put what goes in each dispensation, and that's an easy one. We can all do that. So who wants to go first? It's an agricultural model. So what goes in? What's this first dispensation?
Plowing.
Okay. And here?
Early rain.
Okay. Whoops.
And the next one is latter rain.
Latter rain.
Last one is harvest.
And harvest. Does somebody have a TV on? Is that what I hear? Okay, so next.
Yeah, I got noise in the background, so.
Okay.
I'll stay off.
You can go ahead and mute and then just jump in when you want, if you want to do that. But we love to have your interaction wherever you can. Okay, so the next one I chose was the STA, which Phil should be able to answer. The STA Great Controversy, out of the Great Controversy, Adventism and the Great Controversy. And Phil should be able to give us that one because he partially did already.
1989?
No.
Oh.
Adventism.
Sunday law.
Okay, here, right?
Right.
And what's here?
Post-salvation.
And then?
Second Advent.
Second Advent. So Adventism, this is from the Great Controversy.
1798.
There you go. And this one?
1844 or 1840?
1840.
Where's
August 11th, 1840. Okay, so the next one, and I'm not looking at my sheet either. The next one was the Millerites, the church. Remember that in the Alpha history, there's one call to the church, and then you go to the world, right? So the church would be the one call to the church. The Millerite line, one call to the church. So let's fill in this line then. What's our first waymark?
1798. 1844. Or is it 1840?
1840. Uh-oh, I might have to cheat.
Then wait a minute, I thought it was
1850 is the next one.
no, I think that 1850 is 144.
Oh.
So
1844, I think.
44.
Mm-hmm.
In 1844, I think isn't there?
Go ahead.
I thought, okay, so I thought there was like there were all 1844 up to October 22nd, 1844. No?
Are you meaning here?
Well, that's 1850, isn't it?
Okay.
The last one?
Yep. So what's this one?
October 22nd, 1844.
Okay. So what's this one?
July?
August? Okay.
Remember the date?
Why?
14?
No.
July 21, is it?
21. July 21. Okay, so that's the Millerite in the church. The Millerites in the church. This is the great controversy that Ellen White gives us these three, right? Well, the great controversy for Adventism, she gives us all five. Okay, so then the Millerites, the 144,000 line. So had Christ come back?
So 1798, 1844.
The last one is 1840.
Yeah. Is that Sarah?
Yes.
Good job. I'm even cheating. Sorry, not fair for me to cheat. Well, I got to make sure I write it on the board right, I guess. Okay, so Sarah.
1850.
Okay.
1861. Okay. Then 63 on that line.
Okay. I'm gonna leave that. Okay, she's right. Okay, and then our line. Well, we know these three. What are these three?
Sunday law. Yeah.
Sunday law.
Close of probation. Second Advent.
Second Advent. Okay, and what we're looking at is the two that were created. And this line upon line, this is only some of them. Line upon line is when was line upon line opened up?
1989.
1989. Right? And then we know what this waymark is now, but we're going to go through and try to learn to prove it, which is
9/11.
2001. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, any comments? Questions?
Are we going to review in the Millerite line that 1861 that's not clear?
This one?
Yeah.
Do what now?
How that 1861 is a close of probation? I don't.
Yeah, it would be the close of probation in the Second Advent. This would be the Civil War.
So, okay.
Middle of the Civil War. So the Civil War was to be the time of trouble. Was the time of trouble. Was to be the time of trouble.
That makes sense.
And then 1863. So we know that this is harvest. That's hard doing this when you're tall. Okay. Okay, so so that's it. If you do have your sheet out now, if you do have the notes, I can put them up on, let me put them up on the screen actually, because I do have them here. Okay. So what his articles, I'll flip to the next screen here just to, or the next page in just a second. So we just went through the a few of the reform lines, and what he's showing in these documents is 12 prophetic events that occurred on September 11th. And in the first article we're going to go through is the four winds were restrained, and the third woe began. And then we won't go through each of these yet, but we'll go through these articles over the next coming weeks so that we can get skilled in proving 9/11, being able to defend the waymark of 9/11. Maybe we will read them. The first angel's message was empowered, and the second angel's message. I think we all are familiar with. I think we're familiar with a lot of these, but being able to line it up and have it ready, ready to defend it, because we know that the four winds were restrained and the third woe began. The first angel's message was empowered, and the second angel's message arrived. That they were being repeated. God enters into a covenant with his people, and after he proved line upon line, and that's what we just looked at, is these reform lines. So after he proves line upon line, he enters into a covenant with his people. And then we know that at 9/11, the SDA leadership is passed by. His Article 3 shows that goes through the early rain dispensation for the 144,000. We just looked at that with the agricultural model. We see that the early rain is in that period of time. The precursor to the angel of Revelation 18, 1-3 arrived. And this is not to be mistaken with the angel of Revelation 18, 1-3 at the Sunday law, when his message is empowered and ready to swell to a loud cry. I think it's this message. The record, or the angel, yeah, so it is his. Okay, so the record-taking aspect, this is an important one because we kind of talked about this last week. The record-taking aspect of the judgment of the living and the 144,000 began. Because remember when we were talking about Aaron using the word no legal right, the word legal, no legal right. Anybody have any comments on what he meant by no legal right to leave the movement after 9/11?
This is where
wait, sorry, I have a delay.
Go ahead.
It's horribly hard. I wanted, Elaine, if you could ask the beginning of that question again. Something about 1, you said? I didn't catch it.
We were talking last week, actually a week ago Wednesday, about, I think it was Wednesday, about Aaron's use of the word legal, that at 9/11, if you've accepted all that, at 9/11, you have no legal right to leave the movement. And does anybody know what he meant by no legal right?
Thank you.
At 9/11, you were baptized. So at 9/11, you were baptized because you accepted the line upon line. So when you're baptized, you're entering into a covenant. Covenant saying that you believe in the line upon line, the message that the methodology that God has given. And so from here on, here on forth, since you've accepted line upon line, if you leave, then you leave. It's illegal. You can leave, but it's illegal to leave because you have accepted it, and you have entered into the covenant with the Lord.
Anybody else? Susan, did you have something?
No, I have lots to learn still from the holes I have. But if we didn't understand 9/11 at the time, that makes no difference. It's when we recognize, right, that 9/11 is a waymark that's. So are you saying judgment begins then?
Yeah, I think.
Is that what that means?
Yeah, it's pretty widely known, I think, that judgment began. We know that October 22nd, 1844, do I have that right? That the judgment of the dead began, right? The cleansing of the sanctuary, the judgment of the dead began. The dog snoring down here, sorry. So go ahead, was somebody gonna say something?
Yeah, so Tamina, she explains this.
Okay,
so she has Judgment of the Living, parts 1-6. And in her sixth presentation, she explains this because it seems to contradict the vows. Because the vow 21 or 24, I don't remember which vow, but it seems to say, the vow seems to say the judgment of the living began at 9/11. But with the increase of knowledge, she clarified that and says, judgment of the living doesn't actually begin until the Sunday law, because after you're baptized, and she goes through this whole court process. So after you're baptized, now the record is being kept. So after the record is being kept, then at Sunday law, there's the record, there's the investigative judgment, and there's the executive judgment. So she goes through this and clarifies why the record begins at 9/11, but the judgment begins at Sunday law. So it's also part of the same process.
Okay. So what he has here in point number 7 is that the record-taking aspect, which is what you're referring to, of the judgment of the living, which is what we're talking about, began for the 144,000 at 9/11. So when you're talking about the Sunday law, for us, for the 144,000, it began for us at 9/11, and at the sealing angel, number 8, point number 8, there is the sealing of the 144,000 began. So you're in a period of judgment, like you just said, a court, right? And so the recording angel is recording. And so for you to leave, it is, I think the question was do we have a police force? And we do, and that police force is the recording angel. And he takes it even to the third angel, because that's the fearful and awesome work, awful work, I think, of the third angel, of this sealing aspect. So legally, it's life or death. Legally, if you leave, it's death. If that makes sense. So that's why, because I had asked him about it, and that's why he used the word legal. So, but it would be good to watch Tamina's as well, where she takes it to, because I can understand why she would take it to that, to the Sunday law, because certainly this is for the 144,000, as he has, noted right here that it's for the 144,000, but not for the world. So thank you for that. Okay, so then the sealing, we just saw that began at for the 144,000 at 9/11. And then in the last article, the church received a harbinger that the Sunday law and the close of probation is approaching. So we've seen that through Elder Parminder's presentations, the showing, which I think was the passage that Luke was mentioning about the Twin Towers, that was, and I'm thinking of 9T. Was it the same passage, similar, Luke?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the 9, or is it 9T? And I always remember Life Sketches 411 paragraph 5, because another person who used to be in the movement would remind me that 5 + 4 is 9. 9/11, wow. So I think they're different passages, though. I'd have to just look them up.
Okay, so I know
I'm just sorry.
Go ahead.
There's a buzzing noise as well. Do you hear it, or is it just me?
It might be the dog snoring. I'm not sure. So
Okay. It sounds like the consistency, so it might be one of them.
You gotta wake up. Okay, I woke her up. Did it stop?
And we welcome all feedback from animals and humans. So.
Well, if the buzzing was her, I just woke her up. So,
I think it's so. That's funny.
Did it stop?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, somebody did ask, is there somebody snoring? Okay, so you guys did. Okay, sorry about that. So it was getting kind of loud. Okay, so the sealing began in the 144,000. Okay, so the church received a harbinger that the Sunday law and the close of probation is approaching. So we had early on this, this is why I kind of wanted to do this as well for not just for the people that maybe weren't in the movement earlier. I mean, I don't go way back. I go back further than some of you guys. But what the time that I had, the bulk of that time was, basically under Elder Jeff, and there were things that were not correct, and so then, sorry, I got that. The box is gone now, I think, you guys. So thank you. So anyway, so he lays out in 9T how you can prove that that passage that refers to those buildings in New York City, that is actually a passage that is talking about the close of probation. And he goes through that really thoroughly, that it's a close of probation. And so if it's after the close of probation, then it certainly can't be 9/11. So 9/11 is a harbinger of the Sunday law and the close of probation. And then Jesus begins to build his temple or church on earth, just as Noah, we didn't do the line of Noah. We'll see that in a minute. We're going to go through it. Just as Noah began to build his ark and Elijah began to build his altar. Therefore, on the line of the 144,000, the foundations can then be laid. So then number 11, the third angel's message arrived as it is being repeated at the end of the world. So we've seen that as well. We've gone through that in some of our reviews, that we see the second angel arrive, the third angel also arrives as well. The first angel is empowered all at 9/11. And then we know that the tarrying time began as well. So all of these are studies in themselves. So we'll try to go through as best we can through his notes, and then our own, we'll work on till we are able to defend these waymarks. So here's the whole thing that he had put out. Let me see if I can minus that down. Okay. So, so you got the agricultural model, the plowing, former rain, latter rain, harvest. You've got the 5 waymarks, and Adventism. I think I can make it bigger now because we're going to jump through. We'll just scroll up so that we can keep seeing them all. So Adventism, the Great Controversy, that's the one we just did, 1798, the time of the end, which Ellen White gives us, 1844, which we get as well from the Great Controversy, Sunday Law, close of probation, Daniel 12:1, and the Second Advent. What's here as well, though, is this swelling to a loud cry. So she gives us this in the Great Controversy, this loud cry. So you'll see that when we go down here, you see the loud cry carried down. So then Noah, the first waymark, God calls Noah. The second waymark builds the ark. There's the building and the foundations that are going to be laid. Then the middle waymark is the animals come on board. And then we see a shut door, and then we see the flood. Elijah, God calls Elijah, and each one of these are in-depth studies in themselves. These are just marking the waymarks. Okay, so Elijah, God calls Elijah. He builds the altar, again, demonstrating the foundations being laid, they're building the temple, building God's temple. So he builds the altar, fire comes down from heaven, the false prophets are killed, and then the rain comes. The beginning of ancient Israel, you have the birth of Moses, you have the Red Sea crossing, and he doesn't have this all filled in. So, this is AI, and and I was trying to remember, because I always think I might have AI confused. Was AI after Jericho or before? Which one was the one that was after Jericho that, what was his name? Achan. That Achan took some of the Babylonian.
AI follows Jericho.
Follows, okay. Okay. Okay, so I don't have all of that, and he doesn't have all of that here. So the end of ancient Israel, maybe somebody has answers to these marks here, because I would have thought Jericho was on there. So then you have the end of ancient Israel. You have 4 BC, the time of the end. Baptism, 27 AD, so you get baptism from this one. So you have building here, building the temple for 9/11, building or the Red Sea crossing, baptism, 27 AD, representing baptism. Then you have 34 AD, which is the close of probation on the Jews, and then 63 AD is put in there like to line up with where the loud cry is, where they had that brief window of opportunity to flee, and then 70 AD, the close of probation, and then Patmos representing the second coming. And then the Millerites, the church, you have 1798 is the time of the end, August 11th, 1840, this was the restraint of Islam. And then you had the middle waymark being July, midway. This was midway. And now that I remember that, because as we put it on the board, it's July 21st was 1844. Midway to what? Did anybody remember? if it's midway, we know that it goes to October 22nd, but what was before here?
April 19.
Say that again.
April 19.
April 19, yeah, okay. So April 19, 1844. So this was midway. Midway taught us many things. There's several studies done just on midway during the Brazil School of Prophets, and all those midpoints that she marked. The midpoint marked the Sunday law. So the middle way mark is always marking the Sunday law.
April 19.
Yeah, April 19. Isn't that what somebody said? Did I say it wrong?
No.
Okay. Okay. So I thought maybe I said it wrong. Okay. So yeah. So April 19 is, and then July 21 is midway between April 19 and October 22nd. But that pattern there gave us all the midpoints. Who remembers some of those? One particular one that's on that we drew on the board, or we didn't draw on the board. We just talked about it. Anybody remember? What would be a midway point?
2014.
Yeah, 2014. I'm thinking back in the Millerite
Okay.
history, but that's okay, because I was thinking back in the Millerite history when she drew all those lines amid like the lines of the revolutions and all, and she was doing one particular study on midway. There's a key one back in the Adventist, early in the Millerite history. And Logina might remember, because I think it was per her question or something
That 1861, is that what you were talking about?
Yep, 1861. Actually, 1863 was the midway point, was the midpoint. 1863. So you had the Civil War, 1861 to 1865, and the midpoint was 1863. So there were several midpoints that she went through. There were some, and I don't remember them all, but they all had connecting. They all also were connected using the 126, the 151, and sometimes even half of 126, the 63. So she drew up a whole bunch of lines that took us to, that just took us to a lot of our waymarks. So in the history of the 50s and 60s, there was the whole "In God We Trust," and so there was a couple of midpoints marked in there. Okay, so this was midpoint. This gave us midway, and that midway is what identified Sunday law as well. So then you have October 22nd, 1844. This was a shut door, close of probation, and then 1850, the second Advent for the church. So one call to the church in an Alpha history, and then go to the world. And in an Omega history, you have two calls to the church. So okay, so now you have the Millerite line of the 144,000, which this one we went through. Time of the end is still 1798. And then the second waymark is August 11th. This is the first angel empowered, the second angel arrive. And then you have 1850 as the Sunday law. And then 1861 as the close of probation, 1863 as the second Advent. And then for us, the 144,000, which we just discussed, the great controversy line up here gives us Sunday law, close of probation, second Advent. So we have Sunday law, close of probation, second Advent. And these are the two waymarks that this movement then develops out of all these reform lines. So you have a time of the end, and then you have an arrival of the first angel. Then you have the next waymark, which would be the first angel empowered, the second angel arrive, and also the third arrives there as well. So we just went through the list of 12 prophetic events that are placed here. And so this is assuming, his article is assuming that we understand line upon line. So this is where a place where we would begin if we were teaching a Levite, is to show them line upon line, because 1989 is the first waymark, and we're kind of working our way backwards. And that's, I guess, okay. I think a lot of it we're familiar with, but I didn't plan this, so I hope that doesn't mess anybody up, if we wind up working our way backwards. So 1989 is where line upon line opened up. And so we would want to teach the Levites line upon these reform lines, line upon line, and how you line each of these events up. Okay, so then the lines, these are the lines that we're going to use for the studies that are illustrated above. So from a study of reform lines, we have already noted that each line is comprised of 5 major waymarks, but Sister White only identifies 3 of them, which we just went through on the 144,000. So she identifies the Sunday law, the close of probation, Daniel 12:1, and the second advent. And we understand that neither the Bible nor Ellen White identifies 1989 as the time of the end, nor does she identify 9/11. Therefore, we need to identify our first and second waymark for ourselves. We can do this by investigating the first and second waymarks from the historic reform lines and apply those characteristics to help locate our first and second waymarks. So in doing that, in finding those first two waymarks, we do that by looking at the other reform lines and taking those characteristics and to help us to locate our first and second waymarks. This series will attempt to understand the second waymark of each of the historic lines so we can apply their prophetic properties to 9/11. So each of these marks here give us characteristics to help us with 9/11. Any questions? Okay, so this is where it gets kind of tricky because I didn't know what we were going to do tonight, and I thought we'd just go by his notes. So it's kind of, I didn't want to straight read it, but we're going to read some of the quotes that he has in here, though. But he notes that he starts with the agricultural model so that we can first identify the plowing, the early rain, the early or former rain, and then the latter rain, and then the harvest. But the studies begin by comparing the line of the Millerites, as I think one would have to place the events of September 11th, 2001 in the study first, which requires us to look at Al-Qaeda's attack on the Twin Towers in New York. This demands that we look at the role of certain Islamic powers in Bible prophecy, first, which is primarily done by understanding the second waymark of the Millerites, August 11th, 1840. Okay, so who would like to read this first quote? Can you see it all okay?
Yeah, that's good. I can read if you like.
Okay.
In the year 1840, that's the one.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'll give you the headline here that this is a reminder, too, that August 11th, 1840 occurred during the Second Egyptian-Ottoman War. And if you remember, there was a 10-year period, 1831 to 1841, and 1831 to 33 was the first Egyptian-Ottoman War. And then the second is 1839 to 1841. And then this is Ellen White talking about the Second Ottoman War.
Cool. Is this Ellen White or is this Josiah Litch, this first one?
This was well, it says Josiah Litch, but I'm thinking this is a great controversy. Yeah, down below it says great controversy.
Yeah, okay. In the year 1840, another remarkable fulfillment of prophecy excited widespread interest. 2 years before, Josiah Litch, one of the leading ministers preaching the Second Advent, published an exposition of Revelation 9, predicting the fall of the Ottoman Empire. According to his calculations, this power was to be overthrown in AD 1840, sometime in the month of August, and only a few days previous to its accomplishment, he wrote, allowing the first period, 150 years, to have been exactly fulfilled before I've forgotten how to say that, ascended the throne by permission of the Turks, and that the 391 years, 15 days, commenced at the close of the first period. It will end on the 11th of August, 1840, when the Ottoman power in Constantinople may be expected to be broken. And this, I believe, will be found to be the case.
So that was Josiah Litch, and now she puts her comment. If you want to keep it.
Yeah, sure. At the very time specified, Turkey, through her ambassadors, accepted the protection of the Allied Powers Bureau and thus placed herself under the control of Christian nations. The event exactly fulfilled the prediction. When it became known, multitudes were convinced of the correctness of the principles of prophetic interpretation adopted by Miller and his associates, and a wonderful impetus was given to the Advent movement. Men of learning and position united with Miller both in preaching and in publishing his views, and from 1840 to 1844, the work rapidly extended.
So who can explain the, well, let me see here. She's the principles of prophetic interpretation. What principle is she talking about?
The year date?
Yes, the year date principle. Because Josiah Litch is using the principle of the day equals a year, which he got from Miller. And so, and he used that to calculate out to where he got to August 11th, 1840. And I believe it was, I think it, does it say it there? He first says sometime in August, and then about 10 days before, he says it's going to happen on August 11th. And the Ottoman power in Constantinople may be expected to be broken. So then it happened on that very day. Ellen White says it happened exactly as he said it, which confirmed the methodology. Okay, so at 9/11, the methodology of line upon line is confirmed. So you teach it, you accept it, and it's then it's confirmed. If I said that right. So the methodology is confirmed. So in the Millerite history, the methodology of a day equals year in Bible prophecy was confirmed, and then it gave a wonderful impetus to the work. So you have the first angel empowered, and we know that at 1989, the first angel arrives, and that's when line upon line opens up. So the methodology of line upon line then is, I guess, proven, if I'm saying that right. But I don't know if that's the right way to say that, because we didn't know what 9/11 was at that time, correct? Anybody understand that? It wasn't until looking back we understood 9/11, correct? There was no,
I believe so.
Yeah, there was no prediction for 9/11 that I'm aware of.
Yes. Right.
Okay, so Ellen White says that the fulfillment of Revelation 9:15, Turkey acquiesced her power to the European powers on August 11th, 1840. Uriah Smith adds further detail to the history, noting how Turkey had been all but defeated in a long war with Egypt before the four European powers came to Turkey's rescue by subduing Egypt on condition that Turkey acquiesces power to them. It is interesting how Smith notes that the end of the Ottoman Empire will look the same as the beginning, knowingly or unknowingly recognizing Alpha and Omega parable methodology in this prophecy. So if somebody wants to read that one, and we also went through in those Islam studies, some of these wars, and if anybody wants the notes, I think they're posted. Yeah, they're posted on the website. If anybody wants any of that history of notes to go back to look at or remind yourselves of, but just the history alone of why did Napoleon even go to Egypt and all of that. So, or did I have that wrong? I have that in the wrong place. Yeah, because it takes you all the way back to Napoleon's expedition, and then it carries through and comes to this 10-year period here. So they're all connected. That whole time period is connected. And you also have in that time period, I don't remember the dates, but you had Wahhabism, this battle with the Wahhabis as well go on in there. So there was a lot that went on in that history. Okay, so who would like to read this next quote? This is Uriah Smith then.
I'll read it for you.
Okay.
The supremacy of the Mohammedans over the Greeks was to continue, as already noticed, 391 years and 15 days, commencing when the 150 years ended, July 27th, 1449. The period would end August 11th, 1840. Judging from the manner of the commencement of the Ottoman supremacy, that it was by a voluntary acknowledgement on the part of the Greek emperor that he reigned only by permission of the Turkish Sultan, we should naturally conclude that the fall or departure of the Ottoman independence would be brought about in the same way, that at the end of the specified period, that is, on the 11th of August, 1840, the Sultan would voluntarily surrender his independence into the hands of the Christian powers, just as he had 391 years and 15 days before received it from the hands of the Christian emperor Constantine 10, 11, 12, 13, Constantine 13.
So that's where he's noting, where Aaron noted that he's talking about it, the end from the beginning, the Alpha and the Omega. So it would be just like it was in the beginning. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Keep going.
Yeah.
This conclusion was reached, and this application of the prophecy was made by Elder J. Litch in 1838, 2 years before the predicted event was to occur. It was then purely a matter of calculation on the prophetic periods of Scripture. Now, however, the time has passed by, and it is proper to inquire what the result has been, whether such events did transpire according to the previous calculation. The matter sums itself up in the following inquiry. When did Mohammedan independence in Constantinople depart? For several years previous to 1840, the Sultan had been embroiled in war with Muhammad Ali, Pasha of Egypt. In 1838, the trouble between the Sultan and his Egyptian vassal was for the time being restrained by the influence of the foreign ambassadors. In 1839, however, hostilities were again commenced and were prosecuted until, in a general battle between the armies of the Sultan and Muhammad, the Sultan's army was entirely cut up and destroyed, and his fleet taken by Muhammad and carried into Egypt. So completely had the Sultan's fleet been reduced, that when the war again commenced in August, he had only 2 first-rates and 3 frigates as the sad remains of the once powerful Turkish fleet. 2 first-rates. Okay. This fleet Muhammad positively refused to give up and returned to the Sultan, and declared that if the powers attempted to take it from him, he would burn it. In this posture affairs stood when, in 1840, England, Russia, Austria, and Prussia interposed and determined on a settlement of the difficulty, for it was evident that, if let alone, Muhammad would soon become master of the Sultan's throne. Keep going, or?
Yeah, unless you want somebody else to.
The Sultan accepted this intervention of the great powers, and thus made a voluntary surrender of the question in their hands. A conference of these powers was held in London, the Sheikh Effendi Bey Likgis being present as Ottoman plenipotentiary. An agreement was drawn up to be presented to the Pasha of Egypt, whereby the Sultan was to offer him the hereditary government of Egypt and all that part of Syria extending from the Gulf of the Lake of Tiberias, together with the province of Acre, for life. He, on this part, to evacuate all other parts of the Sultan's dominions then occupied by him, and to return the Ottoman fleet. In case he refused this offer from the Sultan, the 4 powers were to take the matter into their own hands and use such other means to bring him to terms as they should see fit.
So those powers, the European powers, England, Russia, Austria, and Prussia. Okay.
And Prussia was what became Germany. Is that right?
I don't know that. Does somebody else know?
Yeah, I think so.
We have one, I think so.
Okay. Okay, so let's see. Where am I?
It is apparent.
There. It is apparent. Okay. It is apparent that just as soon as this ultimatum should be put by the Sultan into the hands of Muhammad Ali, the matter would be forever beyond the control of the former, and the disposal of his affairs would, from that moment, be in the hands of foreign powers. The Sultan dispatched Rifat Bey on a government steamer to Alexandria to communicate the ultimatum to the Pasha. It was put into his hands and by him taken in charge on the 11th day of August, 1840. So that was an exclamation. It was put into his hands and by him taken in charge on the 11th day of August, 1840. On the same day, a note was addressed by the Sultan to the ambassadors of the four powers, inquiring what plan was to be adopted in case the Pasha should refuse to comply with the terms of the ultimatum, to which they made answer that provision had been made and there was no necessity of his alarming himself about any contingency that might arise. This day, the period of 391 years and 15 days allotted to the continuance of the Ottoman power ended. And where was the Sultan's independence? Gone. Who had the supremacy of the Ottoman Empire in their hands? The four great powers, and that empire has existed ever since only by the sufferance of these Christian powers. Thus was the prophecy fulfilled to the very letter. From the first publication of the calculation of this matter in 1838, before referred to, the time set for the fulfillment of the prophecy, August 11, 1840, was watched by thousands with intense interest, and the exact accomplishment of the event predicted, showing, as it did, the right application of the prophecy, gave a mighty impetus to the great Advent movement, then beginning to attract the attention of the world.
Thank you. Daniel in the Revelation, Uriah Smith. So, and I was kind of thinking as you were reading that, as we started with 2520, really wasn't intending to do all this, but it seemed like a good idea to be able to defend the waymarks. And that was brought up a couple of weeks ago. And for us doing it, kind of working backwards, but I mean, maybe we should have started at the beginning, but at least what I know we need to do, if we're teaching the Levites, we want to start at the beginning. So keep that in mind. We want to be able to do line upon line for the Levites so that they can see those reform lines and then take them to 9/11. And then from 9/11, we could go to the 2520. You know, the 2520 is an interesting one because it makes me think about, you know, some of the Levites that we might encounter that might be people that we tried sharing things with before that just for whatever the reason never got involved. And, you know, and I saw the attack come on the 2520 when we were there at the church starting, and the attack had already basically happened because this all took place before I ever even came into the movement. But when I did come into the movement and started studying the 2520, then they brought in another wave, I guess you would say, of attack. So, so I always wonder who might, you know, some of those people that really want to follow the truth, but for whatever the reason, didn't understand it then. And I thank God for his mercy. But to be able to show someone the entire reform line structure and be able to explain 9/11 and have them see it in that way, you know, I don't know, it just, I long to see that with you know, prayerfully with some of them. So we would need to begin our teaching people at 1989 and with the reform lines. So Okay, so the history of 9/11 is well known to us by now. Al-Qaeda attacked America with passenger jets, and in response, President Bush declared a war on terror, and the support of NATO allies invaded Afghanistan and Iraq. With the support of NATO, invaded Afghanistan and Iraq. Just as Islamic power was restrained by the four Western powers in 1840, we see Islamic power restrained by the world's Western powers after 9/11. So 9/11 wasn't the restraint of Islam, obviously that was their attack. But then the United States declares war on terror with the support of NATO allies, invades Afghanistan and Iraq. So by these was restrained by four Western powers. In 1840, we see Islamic power restrained by the world's Western powers after 9/11, beginning on November 9, 2001, with the Battle of Mazar al-Sharif in Afghanistan. So there's another November 9 here. And I think Elder Tess went through those dates when she went through, I don't remember which presentation it was, but where she broke down the waymarks. Okay, so the first woe plus the second woe equals the third woe. So this is, what is this referred to? What do we call that?
Triple application.
Yeah, triple application. Okay, so there is a type of parable methodology known as the triple application of prophecy. It notes how the prophetic characteristics of the first and the second will be found in the third. For example, the characteristics of the first, Israel, Jacob, and the nation of Israel will be found in modern Israel. The characteristics of the first Elijah and the second Elijah, John the Baptist, can be used to discover who the third Elijah is, namely this movement. The prophetic characteristics of the Tower of Babel in ancient Babylon will be found in modern Babylon. Therefore, if we study the characteristics of the first and second woe, we'll be able to determine the characteristics of the third woe. To study the first and second woes, Aaron is recommending Daniel and the Revelation by Uriah Smith and the chapter dealing with Revelation 9. But he's going to review some relevant details here. So there's the reference for those that have either the book or have the CD-ROM. It's on the CD-ROM, Daniel and the Revelation by Uriah Smith. The first woe occurs during the fifth trumpet. First woe occurs during the fifth trumpet, Revelation 9, 1-11. The second woe occurs during the sixth trumpet, Revelation 9, 13-21. The first four trumpets were the barbarian tribes of Europe warring against Western Rome. And the fifth and sixth trumpets include the Islamic powers warring against Eastern Rome. We have seen already how Ellen White and Uriah Smith identify the Islamic power of the second woe as the Turkish Ottomans. So now let us see who Smith identifies as the Islamic powers of the first woe. Notice again his recognition that the alpha of the Roman Empire is the same as its omega. Does somebody want to read the quote?
I can read it if you like.
Okay.
Okay, where are we starting? So Smith?
Right here.
Or the Roman, okay. The Roman Empire declined as it arose by conquest, but the Saracens and the Turks were the instruments by which a false religion became the scourge of an apostate church, and hence, instead of the fifth and sixth trumpets, like the former, being designated by that name alone, they are called the woes.
So you have the fifth and sixth trumpet, but the woe is a portion of those, each of those trumpets. If I explain that right, let's see. Instead of the fifth and sixth trumpets, like the former, being designated by that name alone, they are called woes. So the Roman Empire, it arose by conquest and it declines by conquest, but it's the Saracens and the Turks that were the instruments by which a false religion became the scourge of an apostate church. So Islam being the false religion and the Catholic Church being the apostate church. So Smith's narrative identifies the Saracens of Arabia and the Ottomans as the Islamic powers of the first woe. And so remember, you had the first 4 trumpets. What was the purpose of the first 4 trumpets?
The attack on the Western Rome by the barbarians.
Right. So or pagan Rome. Yeah, I think it said Western, right? So it was pagan Rome, and then you get into papal Rome. So the 5th and 6th trumpet are addressing papal Rome. Hopefully I said that right. Correct me if I'm wrong, because of the way it's phrased in here. So, okay, so Smith's narrative identifies the Saracens of Arabia and the Ottomans as the Islamic powers of the first woe. Smith starts in Revelation 9:1 and identifies Muhammad as the star that fell from heaven, placing the beginning of the first woe around 610 to 630 AD. Then in Smith's exegesis of verse 2, he details the long war between Persia and Rome, which Rome won, but thoroughly exhausted her strength in doing so. So the Persian king, Khosroes, after his entire discomfiture and loss of empire, was murdered in the year 628, and the fall of Khosroes, the Persian king, may well be represented as the opening of the bottomless pit, inasmuch as it prepared the way for the followers of Mohammed to issue from their obscure country and propagate their delusive doctrines with fire and sword till they had spread their darkness over all the Eastern Empire. I wish I had a map pulled up, but trying to describe, because maybe somebody remembers Khosroes, this battle. Somebody remember what the battle is called? Anybody? I might be wrong from my memory, but wasn't this battle also called the Battle of Nineveh? Anybody remember?
Yeah, I think that's right.
And this was the key, basically, is what he's saying here. He didn't say key, but I remember hearing it taught that way. This is what opened up to where they then swarmed into Eastern darkness over the Eastern Empire. So they were they were down in Arabia, and then this battle opened up the way for them to go forth and spread Islam. Okay, so the 4 winds. According to Smith, the locusts and scorpions of verse 3 are a symbol of the Arabian Saracens. And Judges 7:12 also represents the Midianites as locusts, who were from Arabia, as locusts too. And there's a reference there for Strong's. According to Exodus 10:13, the locusts come from the east wind, which becomes relevant in the next verse when we see how the symbol of the 4 winds represents these prophetic Islamic powers. In his exit, is everybody following that? Any comments? So we're talking about the locusts.
Yes, Elaine, I just have a comment. Aaron and I went through this in the last 2 weeks. We're studying this too.
Good.
And, so what we're looking at is Revelation 9, right?
Yes.
And he breaks it down. I mean, there's a lot of detail here, and I'm just trying to keep up with what you have here. These are his notes, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And he sent me notes too on our last class just this week. And because all of this was so new to me. And I'm trying to keep up with a thought on not only, we've got Rome, which is pagan and papal, and that is from Revelation 8, I believe.
Pagan.
Now, he broke it down. You know, he went through all of the Alarics, the Genseric. There's a whole bunch. There's 4 of them. There's 4 different ones, but I want to get off track from where you are here. It's Revelation. I just want to get the context from Scripture on what we're talking about right here. And because you had mentioned it, you said Revelation 9, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah, it's right up there. Revelation 9:4 is particularly important to this study as its language is almost identical to Revelation 3, where the 4 winds in verse 1 are restrained from hurting the earth of the Sunday law waymark. So, yeah, there is some information that I have written down too that he's got here in this paragraph I just read. So I'm trying to keep up with this because as we go to, I believe it's the 5th verse and 6th verse, it starts talking about the smoke and then the locusts, the scorpions, and this is representing the battles, getting ready,
Yes.
for, as far as I understand it, and this is the Saracens.
Saracens, yes. I think that's
Saracens, yeah, I mispronounced that. So I'm very thankful for this study because it's just what I've been looking at too this last week to understand it even more clearly because there's a lot of detail I've never heard of before. So
yeah,
I didn't want to say too much because I don't want to get something mixed up that might be not applying to where we are right here. So
no problem.
I'm just saying it back to you because I'm trying to reinforce this in my mind,
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've looked at a lot of this, and so it's good for all of us, I think, and as we're so that we can become ready to start out with the reform lines with Levites and take them then from reform lines to the empowerment of the methodology and 9/11 and how we place 9/11 there using the reform lines. But to Jackie's comment on Revelation 8 is the first 4 trumpets, which is the taking down of pagan Rome. And then Revelation 9 is the 5th and 6th trumpet in the taking down of papal Rome.
Exactly. Yes. Maybe just a comment from Revelation 8, because what we're looking at there in the beginning, at least from what I wrote down on my notes from Aaron, is we're looking at AD 321, which was Constantine. And Constantine is the one who began the attack on the true Sabbath and came forth with the Sunday, the first day of the week, as worshiping God. And from, I don't know if anybody else has any comment on this, but the effects of that, it's a cause and effect, and the effects of it, from what I understand, is that God uses Islam to punish papal Rome, and pagan Rome.
Yes,
that's what I understood. That really stood out in my mind, because that was the beginning of. Would that be the woe? I get the trumpets and the woes go together, but which is the trumpet, which is the woe? The woe is what takes place in the punishment of Rome with Islam. You
I can't comment on
understand
that. I can't comment on that, but what I do remember is that the woe was a portion of the trumpet period, if I remember correctly. So it's the trumpet with that has a woe involved with it, and the woe was a portion of that period of time that it's the trumpet. And just another comment on because we read the quote a couple of minutes ago, based, just referring back to what you said, that this is a false religion, Islam. This was Uriah Smith that said it, that it's a false religion that is to be a scourge against an apostate church. So going to what you said, that God used Islam to bring down papal Rome.
Exactly. Yes, that's what I understand.
Yeah, the way I understand the trumpets is that the trumpets are the fall of a kingdom. Those are the trumpets, the falling of a kingdom, and then the woe happens within that trumpet as a portion, as a punishment to papal Rome.
Exactly. Yeah, he used the word scourge, which is a punishment. So, correct. Thank you, Phil.
And if I remember correctly, that ended the woe, the second woe, August 11th, 1840. But there's it was, maybe somebody remembers, Foss, and what was the other one's name? The two that were called before Ellen White. One of them though.
Foy.
Huh?
Foy.
Foy, okay.
Hazen Foss and Foy. Okay. I can't remember his first name though.
William?
There we go, yeah.
Okay. Because one of them wrote in sealed. Where did he put it? Like in a safety deposit box, I think. But I think that's if that was all correct. I remember learning that he wrote that the sixth trumpet ended in 1844, and then the seventh trumpet begins. And I remember a phrase, I think from Daniel in the Revelation, that the purpose of the trumpets were to take down a kingdom and establish a new kingdom. So I always stuck in my head, because in October 22nd, 1844, if that's the beginning, what kingdom is being set up? What kingdom's being taken down, and what kingdom is being set up in the seventh trumpet, if that's correct?
Yeah.
One other thing I remember from one of Elder Terry's presentations, and it may be, I may have things around the wrong way, but Rome's purpose was to chastise God's people for not doing his will, right? But then Rome would always go too far, so then they'd have to be chastised. So God used Islam to chastise Rome, essentially. Does that sound right? That's just what I thought of.
I think so, because I've been reading Jeremiah this last couple of weeks, and you look at, and then when we even look at the 2520, you look at 677 in Manasseh, you see that progressive destruction. So we see that God does chastise his people, and then when they don't, then he uses, if I'm going to say that right, what you said, then what he uses is another nation to chastise his people. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and they tend to, like Babylon, for instance, God's people put in captivity, but then Babylon goes too far. So then, eventually there's the destruction of Babylon, right? So that was kind of the theme, I guess, that I could remember from one of Elder Terry's presentations. Yeah.
So chastising his people first, God's people first. I'm going to work on the pronouns. I'm keeping that in my prayers. We're going to work on those pronouns to get rid of the pronouns and learn the language of heaven. So yes, God chastises the people, and then using another nation, and that other nation, as you said, just like Papal Rome, just like in modern Babylon and ancient Babylon, go too far. Okay, so let's see. I think she just read part of this paragraph here. So we see that the four winds represent these prophetic Islamic powers. In his exegesis, verse 4, Smith notes that after the death of Muhammad, he was succeeded in the command by Abu Bakr, 8632, who, as soon as he had fairly established his authority and government, commanded the Arabian tribes. So then you have Revelation 9. So Abu Bakr is commanding the Arabian tribes. Revelation 9:4 is particularly important to this study, as its language is almost identical to Revelation 7:3, where the four winds in verse 1 are restrained from hurting the earth at the Sunday law waymark. So Revelation 7:3 saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. In Revelation 9:4, and it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. The Bible will use the same language to tell the reader it is referring to the same prophetic actor or event. While figures sometimes have two or more different significations, that's from William Miller's rules, this is not quite the same as using identical language to describe a power. For example, when Daniel 7:8 and Revelation 13:5 describe their respective powers as having a mouth speaking great things, God is indicating that it is the same identical power. The inference is that if it is the four winds restrained from hurting the earth in Revelation 7:1-3, then it is the four winds restrained from hurting the earth in Revelation 9:4. So Revelation 7:3 and 9:4, the four winds being restrained. So Revelation 7:3 occurs at the Sunday law waymark during the sealing of the 144,000. So we know that these things of Revelation 9:4, these things of Revelation 9:4 happened unto them for examples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world come. That's 1 Corinthians 10:11. In other words, the first woe repeats at the end of the world in the third woe. And we are told when this will be at the sealing of the 144,000. The fact that this Islamic power attacks those that do not have the seal of God and spares those that do indicates that in some way they protect God's people, or at least harass and attack the enemies of God's people during the sealing time. During the second woe, the Turks were one of the powers that distracted the enemies of God's people during the Reformation. So they protect or at least harass and attack the enemies of God to give way for God's people to do the work. Somebody want to read this next quote?
So I just have a question, because was that Aaron's explanation?
Yes.
That you were reading?
Yes.
Yeah. And it brings me back to, it's so hard because I'm getting old, and sometimes I can remember the old things better than I can sometimes the new. The old still sticks in my mind. And so I just wanted to know if, upon reading that, it made me think that at the Sunday law, our Sunday law, on the 144,000 line, will the Islam strike again? Isn't that what it says in this paragraph?
That's what it sounds like to me.
But there's not an affirmative answer, because you remember how we used to know they struck at 9/11, they would strike 4 times or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's correct anymore, and I've kind of set that off to the side in my brain. But when you read this, it made me think of that, and I just wondered if that's what he's saying, that at the Sunday law we're going to see the strike of Islam again.
Well, it says that. Yeah, it does say that.
Yeah.
So you read that paragraph. I wouldn't mind reading that paragraph again. So Revelation 7:3, and we'll stick here until we understand it. Revelation 7:3 occurs at the Sunday law waymark. 7:3 is saying, hurt not the earth. So at the Sunday law waymark, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. So he's saying that's the Sunday law waymark, to hurt not the earth, sea, or trees, till we have sealed the servants. 9:4 was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, any green thing, neither any tree, but only those which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. So Revelation 7:3 occurs at the Sunday law waymark during the sealing time of the 144,000. So we know that these things of Revelation 9, that was the trees, the green things, and the things listed in there, which, let's see, the grass of the earth, the green thing or tree, that these things of Revelation 9 were examples and written for our admonition. So Revelation 9 is an example and written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. In other words, the first woe, that's in here, the first woe, in other words, the first woe repeats at the end of the world in the third woe. And we're told when this will be, at the sealing of the 144,000, because that's what it says. Let's see, until the servants of our God are sealed in their foreheads. So it's and we are told when this will be, that's at the sealing of the 144,000. The fact that this Islamic power attacks those that do not have the seal of God and spares those that do indicates that in some way they protect God's people, or at least harass and attack the enemies of God's people during the sealing time. During the second woe, the Turks were one of the powers that distracted the enemies of God's people during the Reformation. So that's what it sounds like to me as well. That this is talking about before close of probation, right?
Yeah, that's what it sounded like, and that's why I wanted clarification on it. Yeah.
So they're protecting or protecting God's people, or harassing God's people's enemy, the enemies of God's people, while they're being sealed. And he says that's at the Sunday law waymark during the sealing time of the 144,000. So we know that these things of Revelation 9:4. So what happened in 9:4, which is the first woe, is an example to us at the end of the world, and marking 7:3 as the Sunday law waymark. Okay. At the sealing of the 144,000. Any comments? Anybody else? Any thoughts on this passage?
Just these notes. These are the notes from Aaron. And he's got under Revelation 9, verse 1, verse 2, verse 3, he's got explanation of those. And then he goes to verse 4, and he's saying the hurt. It's talking about the hurt in verse 4. And it's, he's got Catholic/Crusaders, Army of Rome. So that was the first hurt, if we can call that hurt. Would that be a woe?
That is the woe. Yeah.
Yeah, that is the woe.
Yeah.
Okay. And then in verse 10, it's got another hurt. And that's
the second woe, right?
Second woe, 1299 AD to 1449.
Yeah, second woe. Yeah.
Yeah, second woe. That was verse 10. And then it goes to verse 8. And that is going into the Ottoman Empire, 1299. So that there, as far as I can see, there's no hurt on that group. The Byzantine, that's the Ottoman, the Turkey. So, and that has something to do with the line of Mohammedan, I believe. But that's another, yeah, there's a whole history there on this Islamic line.
Yes.
So I just wonder if this second woe, we're looking at the third woe, right?
But our time is the third woe. But
Yeah.
we're looking at the first plus the second equals the third. So we're looking at the triple application of prophecy. And what we're seeing is in the first woe that they were not to hurt, right? So they are protecting God's people or harassing the enemy of God's people. And then he says here that during the second woe, the Turks, because you had the Saracens in the first woe, and the Turks would be the Ottomans, right?
Right.
In the second woe, the Turks were one of the powers that distracted the enemies of God's people during the Reformation. So
that's right.
It's happening during the Reformation, so the Reformation can go forward while the enemies of God are being distracted by this war with the battle with the Turks.
Yes, that's what I understand. Okay.
You want to read that, Jackie?
Yeah, that is right there where the marker is there. God's providence had held in check the forces that opposed the truth. Charles V was bent on crushing the Reformation, but often as he raised his hand to strike, he had been forced to turn aside the blow. Again and again, the immediate destruction of all who dared to oppose themselves to Rome appeared inevitable. But at the critical moment, the armies of the Turk appeared on the eastern frontier, and thus, amid the strife and turmoil of nations, the Reformation had been left to strengthen and extend. That's Great Controversy 197.2.
So the Turks, or the second woe, are the powers that distract the enemies of God and allowed and gave way for the Reformation to be strengthened and to extend.
Yes.
Okay. So
what I just read explains that prior.
Yeah, and this is probably what you're talking about, hurt and then
the
kill.
First hurt, yeah.
Yeah, so Revelation 9:5 prophesies of Islamic powers that should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. The 5 months represent the 150 years from 1299 to 1449, and thus introduces a different Islamic power to the prophetic stage, that being the king referred to in verse 11, namely Othman, who became king in 1299 and established the Ottoman Empire. We know that the 5 months begin at this time because the prophecy says they had a king over them. That's verse 11, where it mentions they had a king over them. Whereas there was no central king of the Arabians, as each tribe had its own ruler. So now they have a king over them. So Revelation 9:10 repeats the sentiment that the Islamic powers will hurt Rome, but not kill them during the first woe. So 9:10 repeats the sentiment that Islamic powers will hurt Rome, but not kill them during the first woe. And their power was to hurt men 5 months. That's the 150-year period, 1299 to 1449.
That's right.
During the second woe, verses 15, 18, and 20 describe this Islamic power as slaying or killing the Eastern Roman Empire, symbolized here as the third part of men. So if we added the characteristics of the first woe and the characteristics of the second woe together, we know that under the third woe, the Islamic powers will at first hurt and then kill Rome. So who then is Rome in our time? Anciently, Rome was the papacy and her subject armies. The papacy has no army of her own, so she would enter into diplomatic relations with European states in order to command their armies to do her bidding, like Clovis of France, for example. This is the church-state relationship, which is so abhorrent to God and is the subject of eschatology as well as ancient history. This is how the three horns of Daniel 7:8 were plucked up. In modern history, the papacy intended to use Hitler's army to do her bidding once he won the war and became the world's superpower. So which state does the papacy intend to use at the end of the world? To be most effective, it would have to be the world's only superpower. So for the papacy to be most effective, it would have to align with the world's only superpower, the United States of America. So while Clovis was the army of Rome in the 6th century, America is the army of Rome at the end of the world, just as Revelation 13, 12 to 17 prophesies. So the third woe begins at 9/11. So the prophetic role of the Islamic powers under the third woe, the prophetic role of the Islamic powers under the third woe is to first hurt and then kill. So the third woe, we would see first the Islamic powers hurt, and then we'd see them kill the army of Rome or America. While the original intent of Revelation 7, 1 to 3 is the Sunday law waymark, we did see Al-Qaeda hurt America at 9/11. Then Islamic powers were restrained by NATO. That was November 9 we looked at of 2001, or the Coalition of the Willing, so-called. We can therefore make application of these verses at 9/11 as it was a harbinger of Daniel 12:1. Then, and we discussed that earlier, the harbinger, taking that passage out of 9t and being able to identify within that passage that it's speaking about after the close of probation, that there's no more mercy. I think that's the way it's described. There's no more mercy. So if there's no more mercy, then it's a close of probation. So 9/11 is a harbinger of Daniel 12:1. So then at Daniel 12:1, the four winds are fully and finally loose. And that's early writings 36:2. The four winds are loosed to kill or bring down America, which is a third part of Babylon, paralleling Revelation 9:15 and 18. So this is how 9/11 was a harbinger of Daniel 12:1. At 9/11, an Islamic power hurt the army of Rome in a repeat, and the army of Rome being the United States, in a repeat of the first woe. Then they were subsequently restrained in a repeat of the second woe. The second woe is further fulfilled at Daniel 12:1, when an Islamic power kills the army of Rome when they are fully loosed. So in reading this, Susan, I think we have to go back.
I was just going to say, now I'm confused.
Because this shows it what I thought.
Yeah, because
at the close of probation.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I think, let me walk through this, and if I say something wrong, help me. So what we were looking at was where they distract or harass, they protect God's people or harass the enemy of God's people. But at Daniel 12:1, they kill the army of Rome. So I don't know what that means at the Sunday law, but it's at Daniel 12:1 where you see them fully loosed. Because they're restrained.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're restrained at the Sunday law. But if I remember that passage, they're during that sealing time, they're distracting. They're a distraction from God's people going forward with a loud cry. Anybody else?
So this also confuses me. Why would the second woe, why wouldn't it be the third woe? If the third woe at 9/11 is a repeat of the first woe, then why wouldn't the second woe be the Sunday law woe? And the third woe, if they repeat, be 12:1. If you see what I'm trying, I don't understand how the second woe is fulfilled at 12:1. What happens? The third woe becomes the first woe, but we don't have a third. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. The third woe begins at 9/11, and the third woe is the first woe plus the second woe. The first woe is to hurt, and the second woe is to kill. So we saw the hurt.
So all three are acting together during the whole line of the 144,000. All three are in play.
All three woes?
Yes.
The way I understand it, it's the third woe, but the third woe is taking the characteristics of the first plus the characteristics of the second, and that is the third woe. So one of those characteristics of the first is to hurt, but not to kill. Then the second, and I hope I said that right. Somebody correct me if I'm right. The second woe is further fulfilled at Daniel 12:1, because I think he put hurting, killing. Let's see. So if we add the characteristics of the first woe and the characteristics of the second woe together, we put them together, we know that under the third woe, the Islamic powers will first hurt, because the first woe they hurt, and the second woe they kill. So in the third woe, you're going to see Islam hurt the army of Rome, and then you're going to see the Islamic, I don't remember how I said it. You're going to see the Islamic powers hurt the army of Rome, which is the United States, and then you're going to see the Islamic powers kill the armies of Rome. And killing the armies of Rome is Daniel 12:1.
So then we wouldn't have, let me see, is my mic open? Yeah. So then we wouldn't have them come in at the Sunday law?
I don't know, because that passage kind of seemed, we could go back to that passage. To me, I think that here it is right here. Revelation 7:3, which 7:3 was to hurt not the earth. So they're, whatever Islam is doing, they're doing something, but they're not hurting the earth, the sea, nor the trees, because the servants of God are being sealed in their foreheads. So whatever it is that they're doing, they're not to hurt the earth, the sea, nor the trees. What are the earth and the sea and the trees? So Revelation 7:3 occurs at the Sunday law waymark during the sealing time of the 144,000. So we know that these things, the earth, the green things and the grass and the trees of Revelation 9:4 happened unto them. They're examples written for our admonition for those at the end of the world. In other words, the first woe repeats at the end of the world in the third woe. So the third woe is going to be made up of the first woe being repeated. That's the third woe. And we are told when this will be. That's at the sealing time. So this is the hurt. The first woe repeats in the third woe, and it's the sealing time of the 144,000. The first woe is to hurt, not to kill. Let's see, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees. Let's see, make sure I said that right. At the sealing time, the fact that this Islamic power attacks those that do not have the seal of God and spares those that do indicates that in some way they protect God's people, or at least harass and attack the enemies of God's people during the sealing time. During the second woe, the Turks were one of the powers that distracted the enemies of God's people during the Reformation. So I don't know, but those of you that are in classes, you can ask that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will ask Aaron about it. We're going to continue our study this next week on it.
Good. It'll help us as we go through these as well.
Yeah.
You guys can come back and teach me.
Yeah, God is blessed. I mean, that, I had no idea this was coming.
Yeah.
But I'm glad, because this was a subject I wanted to study. And he said, well, let's do it. So he says it gets quite detailed. It'll probably take a couple of weeks or more. So,
yeah, it'll take us a while. We'll go through it on nights that on times where we don't have some of the review of May 2020 to July 2021.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, so the third woe, remember the third woe is the first woe plus the second woe equals the third woe. So the characteristics of the first and the second are what makes up the third woe. And so the prophetic role of the Islamic powers under the third woe is to first hurt and then kill the army of Rome, which is America. We're the army of Rome. So while the original intent of Revelation 7:1-3 is the Sunday law waymark, this is for Susan, for all of us, while the original intent of Revelation 7:1-3 is the Sunday law, we did see Al-Qaeda hurt America at 9/11. Did you follow that, Susan? Are you there?
Yeah, but I'm thinking about it. So I see. Can you read it again?
Yeah. The original intent of Revelation 7:1-3 is the Sunday law. Okay. We did see Al-Qaeda hurt America at 9/11. Then Islamic powers were restrained by NATO. That was November 9, 2001, or the Coalition of the Willing, so-called. We can therefore mark application of these verses at 9/11. So marking application of Revelation 7:1-3 at 9/11, as it was the harbinger. So Revelation 7:1-3 is the original intent is the Sunday law waymark, but we use application to mark them at 9/11 as a harbinger. As a harbinger, 9/11 hurt of Daniel 12:1 kill.
So we won't see them again. Well, I mean, they're there all through the sealing period, right? And the sealing of all God's people isn't finished until Daniel 12:1, right?
Right.
We are supposed to be, if we pass the Sunday law test, then we're sealed, us. But there's still God's people who need to be sealed. So this is how I'm understanding it. And so that means then that they don't come in and fully, take over everything until everyone is sealed. The three groups, all God's people are sealed, and then they fully take over. So we won't see them then after our Sunday law, right? Because
as we follow this through, that's where I see it leading, because he's showing that the original intent is 713 being the Sunday law, and that we make an application of 9/11 as a harbinger. So at 9/11 we see hurt, and at Daniel 12:1 we see kill the armies of Rome. And we see this from 9T, the passage in 9T, and I'm not sure about the life sketches. I don't remember that one, and I should. That I think he said life sketches. Luke, life sketches. Is that what you said?
Yeah, life sketches.
Okay. And so I'm just not remembering that one off the top of my head, but I do remember him going through 9T for sure, and showing that that was a close of probation. And that's the study where he went through and showed that 9/11 was a harbinger of Daniel 12:1. So you have the first woe, hurt, and the second woe, kill. Then at Daniel 12:1, the four winds are fully and finally loosed to kill or bring down America, which is a third part of Babylon, paralleling Revelation 9:15 and 18. This is how 9/11 was a harbinger of Daniel 12:1. At 9/11, an Islamic power hurt the army of Rome, America, in a repeat of the first woe. Then they were subsequently restrained on we just went through that November 9, 2001, in a repeat of this, restrained in a repeat of the second woe. The second woe is further fulfilled at Daniel 12:1. Okay, so they were subsequently restrained in a repeat of the second woe. The second woe is further fulfilled at Daniel 12:1 when the Islamic power kills the army of Rome when they are fully loosed. Everybody okay so far then now? Do we get that a little bit better? We see hurt, the first woe at 9/11. And we see kill at Daniel 12:1. We see a
yes.
Yeah.
And from earlier.
Go ahead, Susan.
I am so sorry. And from earlier, the sealing began at 9/11. What we were reading at the beginning of this study. The recording angel is writing things down from 9/11 until Daniel 12:1, basically because he's not just recording our actions, he's recording all God's people's actions until the close of probation. Is that right? Because then everyone will be sealed and by Daniel 12:1. Those who have chosen the truth will all be sealed by Daniel 12:1. Nobody's coming in after Daniel 12:1, right?
Correct.
And that's when we'll see the final fulfillment. All chaos will break loose, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Phil.
Yeah, Phil, go ahead.
No, that's quite all right, Susan. Yeah, we all need to understand this. I mean, I think this is one of those times, one of those places where we have to juggle the multiple concepts in our mind and lay them out and try to figure out what's going on. So this is not that simple. Remember, there's a simplistic prophetic message, but in that simplistic message, there's a history that is unfolding. And so all these concepts that we have learned, we have to juggle them and then place them in order of the events. So this is not, I mean, this is not easy. It is a difficult thing to do. So, one of the tools that helps us is the 1 + 2 = 3, the triple application. And so we are living in the time period of third woe. So the first woe says to hurt. which we see that as 9/11, but that 9/11 is only a harbinger. And then we have the second woe, which is to kill. So when 9/11 happened as a harbinger, that hurt America. It didn't kill it, but it hurt America greatly. And then then we say that Islamic power is a scourge or a punishment to Rome. So when the Sunday law comes, that's going to hurt God's people. And so Islam is now unrestrained, fully unrestrained. And so to protect God's people, it's going to kill Rome. So the elements of the first and the second woe is within the third woe, and we are living in that time period of the third woe. That makes sense.
Yes, except I was thinking, and I heard you say that, what did you say? That might have implied that at the Sunday law, the kill happens, but the kill happens at Daniel 12:1. I can't remember how you phrased it. And it might have just been me misunderstanding.
Well, Sunday law, we know that, like this is where we have to juggle multiple, things in our head. So the Sunday law, we know, is also a triple application, right? So the slavery and the 1850 history, the 1888 history. So that Sunday law, when that's implemented, and God's people stand with the world, not with the world, but those who go against the Sunday law, we know we're going to be facing persecution. So when that time period comes, we also know that Islam was raised up to either distract or to protect God's people from being killed. And so when that Sunday law, which is going against God's law, and God's people are being persecuted, along with those who stand, who are against the Sunday law, then it makes sense that's when the Islamic powers is going to be fully unrestrained to protect God's people, so that God's people will be, sealed.
That's what you said that I was questioning, that they were fully unrestrained during the Sunday law period. Is that what you said?
Well, after the close of probation, right?
Okay. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought I wanted to make sure, okay. That was what the point that I wanted to ask you about. So that at the Sunday law, I was going back to this, what he said, and then we'll have to close here and we'll pick this up next time. But while the original intent of Hermon is the Sunday law, we make an application at 9/11 when the Islamic powers struck and then were restrained. So would that not mean then that during the Sunday law period, I think this is the question that maybe we're asking, is during the Sunday law period, is Islam, it sounds like, actively doing something that allows God's people, whether it be protecting them or harassing the enemies during the Sunday law period, while God's people go and give the loud cry?
Well, I think when Islam will be fully unrestrained will be after the close of probation, after
yes,
all of God's people are sealed.
Yes, that is what they are, fully loosed at Daniel 12:1. So what I'm wondering, and for those of you that are in classes, because it sounds like then during the Sunday law history, there is Islamic activity that is a distraction. Is that going to be correct? You guys asked that in your classes.
Yeah, so that'll be my question.
Because that's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Is that if the original intent is the Sunday law, and we make an application, does that mean that at the Sunday law, there's some sort of, whatever's going on with Islam that is the distraction for God's people to give a loud cry?
Yeah, because isn't that at the time, like I said, we were juggling multiple thoughts here, because isn't that the time when Antigonus was going to go all the way to Egypt, but because he was distracted by the Nabateans, he could not go only went up to because he was a distraction. Or am I making a wrong application?
No, we do have to. That's probably a good place to take us. Not tonight, but remember that thought, so that when we pick this up, we can look at the line of World War III and the Third Diadochi War. I think it's the Third Diadochi War, where you see the Nabateans come in, because I'm pretty sure the Nabateans come in between Panem and Sunday law, if I remember correctly. And maybe I'll look at that after we close up here. And that represents Islam in here. So they aren't fully loosed until Daniel 12:1, but it sounds like there's, so thank you for bringing that part up, because yes, the Nabateans represent Islam. And if I'm just going by memory, but I seem to remember them being at Panem. Anybody else remember that? Not at Sunday law, but Panem. On that line. Anyways, we'll look it up and we'll hold that thought so that we can talk about that. Gonna hear a bark, sorry. Snoring and then barking. So we'll pick that up here next time. And by then, probably some of you guys will have had your classes and whoever's studying this with Aaron, and come back and help us. So any other thoughts before we close? Anybody? Oh, life sketches. You put life sketches in there. Thank you. Okay, so Sarah, would you like to, are you able to close in prayer? Might have babies around. Susan, how about you?
Okay. Dear Lord, thank you so much, Lord, for being so faithful to all of us. Even, Lord, when we don't keep our promises to you, you always fulfill your promises to us. And we're so grateful. Thank you, Lord, for these studies and this helpful review. Thank you for the good brains in this group that can remember things and help some of us who need to be brought up in our understanding. Thank you, Lord, for these details. They're so fabulous. And for Elaine, for her, she's been so loyal, Lord, in her position, holding down the fort. And I know it hasn't been easy. And I just want to thank you for her service and continue to bless her. And thank you for each and every person in this movement, Lord, those that I've met in person and those that I haven't yet met. But I feel like they're all family. Thank you, Lord. And please give us a good night's rest so that we can partake in tomorrow's Sabbath service together. And we pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.